Battle and Blood is a 2021 romantasy novel by Scarlett St. Clair. You would be amazed at the books I've begun engaging with since getting into Libby and audiobooks. Being able to just listen while working makes all the difference when it comes to engaging with a book that I otherwise would probably never have bothered picking up because it would require more time and attention than I would typically want to afford to it. And I gotta be real with you, though I have seen Scarlett St. Clair's name all over the place for years thanks to TikTok, I've never been particularly interested in her works. Like, maybe a little bit of casual interest, a little like, oh, that seems a little fascinating. Maybe one day I'll pick up a book and check it out when I have nothing better to do. But yeah, since it's available on Libby, I figured why not? Okay, so we start off with Isolde, Princess of Laura. Her human kingdom is due to be taken over by the Vampire Empire of Vampire Empire of Revica, just like several others that have been conquered before them. Her father has courted some criticism from the other kingdoms for basically being willing to negotiate with Revica instead of fighting to the death. On the eve when the Blood King is supposed to come to chat, Isolde is attacked by a monster and a strong, handsome, mysterious, sexy, snarky bad boy vampire comes to her aid, healing an injury by licking it. Listen, I knew the minute I listened to that bit what I was in for, and you know what? I respect it. Go big or go home. So Isolde gets back to her castle and is so hot and heavy that she engages in some self-love, a date with rosy palms, dare I say, only to be interrupted because she's got to get ready for the King of the Vampires to come visit and negotiate with her dad. Now, I don't think I have to tell you where we're going with this, right? Like, even if I didn't read the summary on the back of the book, I know that Mr. Sexy Vampire Man who licks wounds to heal them is Vampire Blood King Adrian, right? And guess who he wants to marry in exchange for protecting Laura and its people? Yeah. Like I said, go big or go home. I can respect going full ham on this. And so, despite her father's and everyone else's protestations, Isolde chooses to accept the marriage proposal from King Adrian for the sake of her people. There is an immediate tacit understanding from her kingdom that clearly, she's gonna take this opportunity to murder the Blood King the second she has a chance to do so, right? Except that Isolde's still a little hot and heavy and decides to engage in some more self-love, and then gets interrupted again. Can't have shit in Detroit, can we? So Isolde goes off and marries Adrian, and they have a very randy wedding night that's only briefly interrupted by Isolde attempting to murder him. Brief glitch, nothing to be concerned about. In true romantasy fashion, he bestows upon her the nickname Sparrow, and also reveals that he can read her, oh, motherfucker, not again! I cannot escape this trope! I don't get it. I don't get it. I don't understand what you all find so fucking hot about your partner being able to read your minds. I don't understand how fun the idea of your partner being able to see every stupid, petty, unedited thought that runs through your head. And it has to be a fun idea. It has to be something you all like, or else this trope would not be showing up in so many books! Anyway, Isolde takes off with Adrian and his army of vampires to head back to Revica. On the way, they get attacked by Isolde's former subjects, who are furious that she's chosen to marry the Blood King. We also learn that something called the Crimson Mist is being used to both kill and turn people into monsters. This is suspected to be the work of Ravenna, the previous king's witch. Ravenna? I don't know. I don't remember how they pronounce it, and I don't care. It's not important. Revica and its nobles aren't a huge fan of their king's big, dumb human wife, especially Saphira, the human lady he's been feeding from, because of course vampires feeding on humans is an inherently sexual experience, and that's a level of intimacy that Isolde just ain't comfortable with. Her feelings on Adrian are conflicted, but even if she doesn't want to fall in love with him, he's her husband, and she won't tolerate infidelity. This becomes a whole will they, won't they, except of course they will. We all know they will. We all know what kind of book we're reading here. Thing between Isolde and Adrian, because she feels like she's betraying her father and people by not hating Adrian and wanting to kill him. Now, while in Revica, Isolde begins to experience visions of herself with a younger, less brooding Adrian. She also starts to see visions of the previous king, who threatens her after she rejects his advances. See, back in the days of yore, there were witches. Nowadays, everyone recognizes that witches were bad and evil, but of course the truth is that they were good and pure and girl bosses. Evil King Dragos, Adrian's predecessor, murdered them all because they wouldn't do as he asked, except for Ravenna, who basically betrayed her sisters. Among the witches was Yesenia, a witch that Adrian was desperately in love with and was burned at the stake by Dragos, and who strongly resembles Isolde. Yeah, this is a reincarnation love story. Anyway, things come to a head at the coronation where Ravenna attacks and tries to steal the Book of Dis, a magic book of some importance. She gets driven out, Isolde takes her place as Adrian's queen, and we're neatly set up for a sequel. Okay, so, first of all, I meant what I said at the beginning. I respect the author's decision to go big or go home. If you're gonna write vampire smut and lean into it. Of course, vampires feeding on people is intensely erotic. Of course, they can heal wounds by licking them. We've gone full Bodice-Ripper on this one, and I respect that. We all know this book is porn with a fantasy background, and it seems self-aware about that. On that note, this definitely rates as one of the spicier romantasy books that I've read. Sex scenes popped up constantly throughout the book. So if you're looking for more of the spice than you are the romance, this is your book. I wasn't really feeling the romantic chemistry in this one, and I don't know, maybe that's just a me thing, because I usually don't feel much organic chemistry between romantasy leads. I feel the authors are trying to make fetch happen, but it just usually doesn't happen for me. But again, that could just entirely be a me thing. I did kind of like Isolde. She fell into a lot of the typical romantasy heroine tropes. She was definitely a girl boss, but I feel like a lot of, I guess you would call it high romantasy, stuff that's kind of set in fantasy worlds that has kind of very little or no connection to our real world. They tend to have nice characters, which is fine, but Isolde is royalty, and damn, but she acts like it. I feel like the author really did capture the attitude that a lot of the royals of old had, where it's like, yeah, I can be nice, but I am also above you, and you'd better not forget that. Isolde has no problem pulling rank and reminding people that they are beneath her. It made her an interesting change from the typical romantasy heroine that I've encountered thus far, who tends to be a little more awkward, maybe not submissive, but maybe not also strong enough to stand up for herself. I feel like sometimes in the effort to make the main female character relatable to the audience, which is a big thing in romantasy because a lot of it is kind of wish fulfillment, they have a tendency to make the female characters nicer, which, is fine in a certain respect, but also when they're royalty, I don't know, there is a little bit of that thing where it's like, it's not uncommon for royalty to kind of take an attitude of like, yeah, I'm not a terrible person, but we still have a social status thing here, and I'm still on top of you, so never forget that. I don't know, I'm rambling. The point is that Isolde acted like I would kind of expect a royal to act. She was not a bad person, but also, she had no problem reminding people that they were beneath her because she is literally royalty. Adrian was pretty typical romantasy love interest, if I'm being completely honest. Traumatized bad boy who is passionately devoted to his woman. Oh, and of course, he fucking reads minds! Ooh, okay, sorry. I recognize that this is also very much a me thing, but I do not, for the life of me, understand why so many people like the mind-reading love interest thing. I don't. I can kind of understand why people like the idea of Violet having a psychic bond with Tairn and Andarna in Fourth Wing, because they're dragons and that bond exists to make her better at what she does. But I cannot understand, from Evermore to Fourth Wing to ACOTAR to King of Battle and Blood, why the idea of a romantic partner having access to your thoughts is so appealing. Okay. Let me walk that back a bit. I can understand the function of a mind connection in a fantasy setting because it effectively takes the place of cell phone or internet usage, immediate communication, which can be very useful for plot purposes. I would argue that it's a double-edged sword in that you now have to find ways for that convenience to disappear when it becomes less convenient for what you're trying to do in the plot. But I see its use from a practical stance. I can even grasp the concept of, oh, it's just a mind link. They can communicate telepathically, but they can't actually read each other's minds thing. I can get that, because at least that limits the telepathy to explicit communication and not knowing each other's deepest, darkest, pettiest thoughts. Because that's ultimately why I don't find this trope particularly romantic or sexy. We all have petty, stupid, judgmental, uncharitable, unpleasant thoughts that flit through our heads from time to time. Things we obviously either check ourselves on or, at the very least, have the good sense to keep to ourselves. I don't need to know every thought in my partner's head. I'm okay with some mystery existing between us. Okay, so that trope aside, there were a few others that caught my attention. I am noticing that certain themes are present in a lot of romantasy books. At some point, I'll probably end up putting a lot of them together and doing a bit of a bingo sheet out of it, but here are just a few I noticed in this book. Adrian, to go off my earlier point, is a safe, edgy love interest. He is a safe bad boy monster, and by safe, I mean that as safe for Isolde. He's violent towards others. He literally gouges a man's eyes out for merely thinking that Isolde is a whore. But never towards her. The closest he gets is some rough sex that she is fully consenting to. I'm noticing this pattern among male love interests in Romantasy. They are bad boys, quote unquote. They are monsters, quote unquote, and they may commit brutal acts of violence against other people. Often the violence ends up being justified in some way. Again, apparently the price of thinking that is old as a whore is to have your eye ripped out. But almost never is that temper or tendency towards violence expressed towards the main female character. Or even, I would argue, in a way that is super inconvenient for the female main character or the plot. She is the main male love interest, one true love, and they would never lay their hands on her. He may murder anyone else who crosses him, but he is always tolerant of his one true love's obnoxious or defiant behavior. It's kind of like the Coven. Yeah, he's a serial killer and also the devil, but he would never hurt me, and that's what matters here. Another trope that's really standing out to me is the everything you know is a lie, everything you were taught was bad is actually good thing. King of Battle and Blood, Fourth Wing, Akatar, Shield of Sparrows, Unbound, I keep seeing it. It's not just the Beauty and the Beast thing where we learn that the love interest isn't as bad as we originally thought him to be, but an entire divestment of their previous belief system. The government is lying to you, your loving family is actually the evil psychopaths of the world, and every single bad thing you've been told about your sexy new love interest and his people are lies too. Then you have the bullying, the heroine being unfairly targeted for something outside of her control thing. I'm just noticing this where, like, don't get me wrong, it's not uncommon in fantasy to have, like, someone who's part of a marginalized population within the context of that fantasy world be the main character or be subject to oppression. There are so many stories that start off with that. It's mostly we're not necessarily talking about oppression. We're talking about being unfairly, illogically targeted for animosity. Like, Isolde is blamed by her people for marrying the Blood King. And it's like, the Vampire King just rolled up and said he wanted her as a bride and basically implied that they were going to go to war if he didn't get her. Why are you mad at Isolde? It kind of comes across as, kind of going back to the everything is a lie and everything you thought was good is actually bad trope. It kind of feels like that's being employed for the purposes of further alienating the main female character from her original people, her original family, her original group of people that she thought was good, so that she now has to cleave unto the sexy male love interest people and him. The other thing, too, is that, like, on the bullying topic, a lot of the bullying is kind of high school. I'm seeing this in Fourth Wing. It's Cat, or I should say Iron Flame. It's Cat, who is kind of like being a mean girl to Violet. In this, it's in King of Battle and Blood, it's Saphira. What other one did I read where they were kind of a mean girl to I don't remember. It's just something, it's a pattern, okay? It's a pattern. I'm noticing a pattern. One other trope I wanted to mention was the pathetic little third wheel trope. Saw this in the Coven, saw it in Sanctuary of the Shadow, saw it in Fourth Wing, sorta. But basically, this is a guy that wants the main female character. But he's just not it. He's not sexy enough, he isn't passionate enough, he doesn't treat her right, sometimes he ends up betraying her, otherwise disrespecting or crossing her. Killian is that guy in this book. He wants Isolde, and he's bitter about not having her. Although I'll grant you, he does get it together and does right by her towards the end of the book. I don't know. Nothing wrong with these tropes necessarily. It's just getting interesting to see how many of them are commonly repeated throughout this subgenre. I do at some point plan on doing a video where I just have a bingo sheet with a lot of these tropes, and I may just go book by book by book by book by book, trying to see if I can get a bingo from all the tropes that I can check off on the list. But I gotta read more Romantasy books before I do that. I gotta have a good number of them so I can have fun with it. So yeah, A King of Battle and Blood was an eventful read. It's always interesting to read a book that recognizes what genre it is and just leans into the conventions. It's unapologetically bodice-ripping smut with a fantasy setting. If you're into that, you'll probably enjoy this one.